I'm Gritty Kalane in the CapeCod.com News Center, joined today by a special guest from the Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge. Do you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
Sure. My name is Rick Nye, and I am the refuge manager for Monomoy National Wildlife Refuge.
All right, awesome, Rick, and thank you again for having this conversation with me.
Sure, no problem.
All right, so we kind of heard some unfortunate news, as I already mentioned before we hopped on mic, that the Wildlife Refuge Center is unfortunately succumbing to erosion and has lost quite a bit of ground in recent years, and it sounds like it's now kind of reached the point where demolition is going to have to be required. Do you mind just elaborating a little? I don't know how long you've been with the organization, but can you just tell us what you've been seeing working there over the past few years in terms of how bad it's gotten?
Yes, sure. The erosion here, we're on the southeast corner of Cape Cod, so we're getting the full force of the Atlantic Ocean and the currents. Depending on the year, depending on what line, we have transect that I'm measuring. We're seeing between 30 to 45 feet a year of erosion. It's really fast. And that's been pretty steady since more or less 2020. And so, we've lost a lot of facilities and structures up here.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate, especially being on the Outer Cape. I know that we've already had a lot of houses that have even been stilted at various points. I guess it's interesting that it's happening from so farther south. Normally hear about it being more like Wellfleet, Truro is the area that I immediately think of, but this is like right off of Chatham too.
Right. Yeah. So because we're at the corner. We're looking southeast when I look out my window. Yep.
So as well, we heard that you're going to be doing another kind of like visitor night opportunity for this weekend for people to get basically a last chance tour of the building. Do you mind elaborating a little bit more on that event? And are there other efforts to kind of document or archive some of the stuff? I know it's probably a very kind of somber topic to talk about in a way, but hopefully it's not the end of the organization just because we're losing the building.
Correct. So it'd be Saturday, March 9th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have some displays that we haven't yet taken down. The diorama, we got a video screen that plays a nice sequence of videos about the refuge and other displays. We're going to have some sign-in sheets if people want to leave a note or, any kind of remembrance they want to provide, they can do that. And then we'll have several staff and volunteers on hand to answer questions and talk about it. Many of our volunteers have been from Chatham or Cape Cod they've lived here for decades, so they know a lot. They know a lot about this place. They know a lot about, Cape Cod. And this, the thing to keep in mind is this is the 2 to 3 acres that we have on Morris Island for our visitor operations management. We still have about 8,000 acres of islands and water that we manage, which are doing fine out there on Cape Cod, sticking off the southern end of the Cape here. So, our mission is strong. It's just where we're going to do it from is what's in question.
Yeah, there's still jobs to do. Unfortunately, it's going to be just another day as soon as all this is over, one way or another. But in the meantime, do you guys have is there a new home plan? Can you tell us a little bit more about the facilities that are going to be lined up after this?
Not yet. We've been looking, as you can imagine, finding a property that meets all of our needs. We got 3 boats. We try to house up to 12 interns and visiting staff for the season. Visitor center plus management office. That's a pretty big parcel of land. So we haven't been successful. And even if I had a blank check, I don't know if that piece of property exists. We're trying to find something that maybe meets that in aggregate. Maybe there's 2 parcels that we would kind of split between. So, but I don't have anything lined up just yet. And the thing about going into April, our staff will be spending half their time in the field anyway. So it's just a matter of where do we work from on the rainy days, and so we'll be doing that from home. And then we're just working with any partner that that has an eye towards conservation or seeing us stick around in the Chatham or at least southeast portion of the Cape that might have a property or a facility for us to co-locate with. We're working with one partner on a potential option, so hopefully that comes through to meet at least a couple of our needs as we move forward.
What is the what do you think is kind of the biggest issue in terms of trying to find a home for right now? Would it just be the boats, the equipment like that? Is that kind of, otherwise you can do most stuff from home?
The biggest thing is really the main thing I worry about is where I'm going to house the interns because as out here knows, affordable housing and they kind of even though we're covering their costs, even finding the kind of facility that's like affordable housing for our interns to stay in. That's probably the hardest thing because without them we can't do the work. They're out there, 8, 9, 10 hours a day walking all those beaches, trying to look for birds and count them and document what's going on out there. One of the ways we've made up for that is we've beefed up the accommodations on the island. We have the lighthouse. We use the lighthouse out there, and we set up a campsite. But it's nice for them to be able to come off island for a weekend, do laundry, go grocery shopping, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see the that being a bit of a dent in the operational abilities when it comes to the interns. Unfortunately, is this a? I mean, you guys are very kind of science focused in general. You guys take care of the local wildlife. You guys are kind of doing a lot of research. There used to be a National Weather Service, I believe, section of that building as well. Has it kind of been like an opportunity? Like, is there a silver lining almost in that you can use this as an opportunity to showcase, like, yeah, Cape Cod suffers a lot of erosion? Is this going to become like part of outreach efforts or some other message to kind of come along with this for the people in general?
Sure, and actually, what's happening is so we have a nonprofit that kind of advocates for us. They're called the Friends of Monomoy, and they've hired a videographer and a writer to. Actually, I shouldn't say they've hired them. They've sponsored a kickoff for a documentary that they're doing. So they've received a lot of funds to cover the cost of this documentary, and it's actually coming out in April. So Fish and Wildlife Service didn't sponsor it, but I'm in there, and our site is featured in it. But it's a real. I think it's so. I think that kind of answers your question. I think you're going to get to see that documentary in April. I think 11th. I don't know. Yeah, and so that's going to showcase this topic of erosion and what's happening not only here but other places throughout and different viewpoints. So I think they interviewed I want to say a couple dozen people. So there's a lot of viewpoints put in that documentary. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that's going to kind of continue the conversation that we've all been having here. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, that's part of our normal discourse is this is a state of change. There's always change happening here. And so once we get back to having some kind of visitor center, visitor services, actually, let me correct that. The Friends also maintain a visitor kiosk at our site. So that'll remain. And so there will be somebody there in general, from 10 to 4 every day from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So those folks, they're like I was saying before, they got decades of experience living here, so that they talk erosion to anybody who wants to talk with them about it. So So the short answer to your question is yes, and I kind of gave a couple examples on how.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's very interesting to note that there's going to be the documentary coming out soon. Can't wait to see your face on that one. That'll be very exciting. I guess this is also a good opportunity to kind of stress that it's like the trails are still there. Like this is just kind of like a safety sort of thing. It's not like any of this area is being like closed off permanently as it falls into the ocean forever. Do you kind of want to highlight like some of the trails you guys already have and some of the other services you still will be providing even after this?
Sure, yeah. So people who haven't been here for a while, they used to be able to walk straight down to the beach from our parking lot. So they're not able to do that directly. The trail, one of the trails that used to exist, is gone, and then the other one it cuts off at about 100 yards because it ends at a platform, and a little bit further it's like an 8-foot drop. So you can walk down to that platform. It's mostly paved, but it does get a little rough. And there's a couple steps. So, but people who can't really go for more than a quarter-mile walk, I think they can get down there, and that's a nice view, kind of close to the ocean. There's usually an osprey in the nest when they're nesting off to the left. So that's a short little trail straight off from our parking lot. The other one is what we kind of refer to as the Morris Island Loop Trail. You have to basically park in our parking lot and then walk through using a right-of-way that goes through the neighborhood here. It's about a quarter-mile walk down the main street of the neighborhood on Tisquantum Road, and then there's a split rail fence and a short trail down through a wooded area, and then that'll put you back on the refuge. And there's about 3 miles of walking to do if you hit every trail, every loop.
Now, I know I'm supposed to be the unbiased journalist here, but I am from the Outer Cape and definitely have been down the trails before. Very, very beautiful location that you guys are on. So that is great to know they're still going to be available. It's not like that's going anywhere anytime soon. So that's about all the time that we have, but thank you so much for having this conversation with me, Rick. Is there anything else you want to highlight for our listeners while I still have you about ongoing efforts or upcoming events or where people can just learn more about what you guys do?
Well, the one thing I would just let people know about visiting, so our parking lot will probably shrink a little bit more. And it does tend to get full, especially during the summer, from right around 10. I think like pre-lunch crowd starts to pack it in, and so just time your just plan your visit around peak hours if you want to try to get one of those parking spots. People do have the right to park on the causeway, which is an outbound. You come in, turn around, and then head back out. And then just to remind people that we're still doing the work out there, counting the birds. And we're doing pretty well at that. We got all kinds of terns and plovers, and so that work continues.
Sure. Actually, as you mentioned that, I did. A quick question was, I believe it was like a record season for the piping plovers this season. Is that correct, or am I a little off?
I don't know. I'm not familiar. Maybe
Sure.
at a higher level than just our site. I mean, we have had record numbers of common terns, which is sort of a proxy. Our primary concern is erosion terns because they're endangered, but they mix in with the common terns. So that was a record year for us for Monomoy on the common terns. But our plovers kind of fluctuates. I don't know if that plover number is maybe at the state level. I'm not sure about that.
Sure. We had an interview recently with some Mass Audubon people, and I thought they had mentioned that, but I can't quite remember myself at this time right now. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick. I do appreciate that a lot, and good luck with everything. And definitely let us know when you're able to find that next new home for you guys. And in the meantime, good luck. Thank you again for the conversation.
Sure. Thank you, Grady. Appreciate your interest and call.